Did you know what medieval seniors, those wise elders of the 500 CE to 1500 CE era, truly ate? Were their diets filled with exotic spices or simple gruel? Did they truly eat what their doctors prescribed? What if everything you thought you knew about aging and food back then was just a tiny slice of a much bigger, stranger pie? Number 1. The white diet obsession for the delicate digestion of the old. The idea of the white diet for medieval seniors might sound like something from a modern health trend, a bland, unexciting food plan. Yet in the medieval world, this particular eating custom was not just a suggestion, but a widespread practice, especially for those in their later years. It represented a deep-seated belief about the fragility of the aging body and the need for gentle nourishment. This dietary approach focused on foods that were considered easy to digest, mild in flavor, and thought to promote an inner balance vital for the elderly. It was a surprising departure from the robust, often heavily spiced and diverse meals enjoyed by younger, more active individuals. The core principle behind the white diet for seniors stemmed from humoral theory, the dominant medical understanding of the time. This theory proposed that the human body was composed of 4 main humors: blood, yellow bile, black bile, and phlegm. A person's health depended on the balance of these humors. As people aged, medieval physicians believed their bodies became cooler and wetter, and their digestive fires weakened. This meant that rich, heavy, or highly spiced foods, which were thought to generate too much heat or produce excessive humors, could overwhelm the aging system. A text from the year 1320, titled "The Regimen of Health for All Ages," often attributed to the school of Salerno, detailed these specific humoral shifts in the elderly and recommended a corresponding diet to counteract them. The text emphasized the importance of foods that were temperate in nature, neither too hot nor too cold, neither too dry nor too moist. The foods central to this white diet were remarkably simple. Almond milk was a staple cherished for its smooth texture and perceived nutritional value. Without the heavy qualities of cow's milk, it was often used as a base for various dishes, offering a creamy consistency. Rice, often boiled until very soft, formed another crucial component. It was regarded as a food that was easy on the stomach, providing sustenance without taxing the weakened digestive system. Poultry, specifically, the white meat of chicken or capon, was frequently included, always boiled or poached, never roasted or fried. The absence of browning or crisping was deliberate, as these cooking methods were thought to add heat or dryness to the food, which was deemed unsuitable for the elderly. Fish, especially white fish like cod or haddock, also found its place again, prepared by gentle poaching or boiling. These items were not just selected for their color, but for their perceived mildness and digestibility, qualities that physicians of the era vigorously promoted for an aging populace. The preparation of these white diet foods. Vegetables, if included, were usually light greens or root vegetables, boiled until very tender and often pureed or mashed. Parsnips, carrots, and spinach were common, all prepared to a soft, almost mushy consistency. Spices were used sparingly, if at all, to avoid stimulating the humors excessively. A pinch of salt was often the extent of seasoning. Honey, a natural sweetener, might be added in small quantities to make certain preparations more palatable. The focus was on ease of consumption and digestion, ensuring the body expended minimal energy. Processing the food. Records from the household accounts of Lady Eleanor de Montfort from 1270, meticulously listing daily provisions, show a consistent pattern of gentle foods purchased for her mother, who was then in her late 60s. These records contrasted sharply with the more varied and robust provisions for younger members of the household, including game meats, strong cheeses, and dark breads. The white diet extended beyond just the main meal snacks. For seniors, often followed the same principles. Small portions of soft bread, perhaps dipped in almond milk or diluted wine, were sometimes offered. Boiled eggs, particularly the whites, were also considered acceptable due to their perceived lightness. Even the choice of liquids was carefully managed. Water, often boiled to purify it, was given, but diluted wine or ale was frequently prescribed. This was not for intoxication, but for its perceived medicinal qualities, including warmth and aid to digestion in small quantities, as detailed in the Physician's Guide compiled by Master Giles of Rome around the year 1290. The guide suggested that diluted alcoholic beverages, when warmed, could open the pores and assist in the circulation of humors for the elderly. The surprising aspect of this white diet was its pervasive influence across social strata. Though the quality and quantity of the food differed, a wealthy senior might enjoy chicken boiled in broth flavored with precious saffron, while a poorer senior might subsist on rice pottage made with water, and perhaps a few foraged herbs. The principle of the diet, however, remained constant. Bland, soft, easily digestible foods, a 14th century monastic infirmary manual, discovered in the ruins of Fountains Abbey in 1530, outlined the specific daily meals for elderly monks. These meals consisted primarily of thin pottages, soft white bread, and small portions of boiled fish or fowl, a stark contrast to the more varied and hearty meals enjoyed by the able-bodied monks working in the fields or scriptorium. The manual specifically noted that these dietary adjustments were made for the weakening humors and the diminishing heat of old age. The adoption of the white diet was often a sign of respect and care for the elderly, a practical manifestation of medieval medical knowledge. It was not seen as a deprivation, but as a necessary accommodation for the body's changing needs. When a senior citizen, perhaps a knight or a noblewoman, began to show signs of age, their diet would often be adjusted, sometimes by their family, sometimes by their physician or a skilled cook. The cook's role was crucial here, as they had to be knowledgeable in preparing foods that were both healing and palatable within these strict guidelines. An anonymous 15th century cookbook known as The Form of Curie, while largely catering to general household cooking, contained a small section dedicated to diets for the infirm and aged, which heavily featured recipes for almond milk preparations, soft puddings, and boiled white meats. These recipes use very few spices, relying instead on the natural flavors of the ingredients and careful cooking to achieve tenderness. The enduring legacy of the white diet speaks volumes about medieval perceptions of aging. It highlights a time when medical advice, even if based on humoral theory, directly influenced daily eating patterns. It was a world where a spoonful of soft-boiled chicken and rice was considered an act of profound care and a vital step in prolonging life and comfort. For the respected elders of society, this seemingly bland and unexciting diet was, in its own way, a revolutionary approach to geriatric nutrition for its time, a surprising testament to their dedication to the well-being of their senior citizens. The focus was always on ensuring ease of digestion and preventing any strain on the aging body, a constant theme repeated in countless medical treatises and household records from the period. This consistent attention to the physical state of the elder, translated into strict dietary control, demonstrates a surprising level of detailed care, far beyond what some might expect from such an ancient time. The belief was that proper dietary management could stave off the decline associated with old age, allowing individuals to maintain their faculties and comfort for as long as possible. It was a proactive measure deeply embedded in the daily life of many medieval households, a quiet yet powerful testament to their understanding of health and longevity. Number 2, elderly fasting exemptions that looked more like feasting. The medieval period was deeply religious, and fasting was a cornerstone of spiritual life. Christians observed numerous fast days throughout the year, including Lent, Advent, and various vigils. These fasts typically involved abstaining from meat, dairy and eggs, and often limiting the number of meals per day. Yet, for the elderly, these strict rules often bent sometimes to the point where their fasting diet seemed more abundant and varied than the regular fare of many younger individuals. This surprising flexibility revealed a pragmatic understanding of the physical needs of the aging body, overriding purely spiritual dictates. It was a testament to the respect and care afforded to seniors, acknowledging that their physical resilience differed significantly from that of their juniors. The rationale behind these exemptions was rooted in both compassion and a practical application of humoral theory. Physicians and church authorities recognized that the elderly often lacked the physical strength and robust digestive fire of younger individuals. Strict fasting, which often involved consuming only lean, cold foods like fish and vegetables, could be detrimental to their health, potentially leading to weakness, illness, or even death. A decree issued by the Council of Tours in 1163, later widely adopted by various dioceses across Europe, explicitly granted dispensations from strict fasting for the elderly, the infirm, pregnant women, and young children. This decree recognized that the spiritual benefit of fasting was outweighed by the potential physical harm to vulnerable populations. For seniors, this meant a significant alteration of their dietary regimen during periods when others were strictly abstaining. What did these exemptions look like on the plate? While meat was still generally forbidden on fast days, the elderly often received special allowances for nutrient-dense foods. Fish, already a permitted food on fast days, was often prepared for seniors in richer, more substantial ways. Instead of plain boiled fish, a senior might receive fish cooked in almond milk, or even richly flavored fish stews that incorporated warming spices. The Physician's Guide to the Elderly from the mid-14th century, widely circulated among wealthier households and monasteries, recommended preparing fish for seniors with gentle and restorative herbs such as parsley and dill, and serving it with soft, nourishing sauces. This was a far cry from the simple fish and vegetable fare of general fasting. More striking were the allowances for dairy and eggs, which were typically forbidden during strict fasts. For seniors, cheese and eggs were often permitted, providing much-needed protein and fat. Soft cheeses like fresh curds or mild goat cheese were deemed easier to digest. Eggs, especially soft-boiled or poached, were considered highly nutritious. The household accounts of the Duke of Burgundy from 1450 show specific entries for extra eggs and cheese for my lord's aged mother on fast days, indicating a deliberate provision beyond the standard fasting fare for the rest of the ducal household. These provisions were not secret but acknowledged practices, part of a common understanding of geriatric care. Beyond specific food items, the frequency and portion sizes also differed for seniors. While younger individuals might be restricted to one main meal per day, during Lent the elderly were often permitted multiple smaller meals or snacks throughout the day. This sustained nourishment was believed to keep their internal warmth stable and prevent debilitating hunger. A fascinating entry in the monastic rules for the care of the infirm from the Abbey of St. Gall in 1080 detailed a specific schedule for elderly monks during Lent. It outlined small portions of bread and watered wine in the morning, a midday meal of fish and vegetables, and a light supper of pottage before nightfall. This schedule was far more generous than the single lean meal prescribed for the general monastic community, clearly prioritizing the physical well-being of the aging monks. The type of pottage served to elderly seniors during fast days also differed. While regular pottage might be a thin gruel of grains and water, for seniors it was often enriched with ground almonds, honey, or even carefully selected fats. Sometimes specific vegetables known for their warming or restorative properties, like leeks or onions, were added in gentle proportions. These rich pottages provided calories and nutrients that were vital for maintaining strength. A recipe from a 13th century English household manuscript, compiled for a noble family, described a Lenten pottage for the aged that included ground millet, almond milk, and a generous amount of dreamy. This was a substantial and nourishing dish, very different from a sparse fast-day meal. Even beverages saw special treatment. While water was always available, watered wine or mild ale was often prescribed for seniors on fast days, not just for hydration, but for its perceived medicinal properties. Alcohol was thought to warm the body and aid digestion, crucial for the cold and weakened elderly. A physician's note from Bologna in 1380 regarding the care of a prominent merchant's aging father prescribed a small goblet of warmed red wine 3 times a day, even on fast days, for the strengthening of his humors. This was a common medical recommendation, reflecting a blend of traditional beliefs and practical dietary advice. The surprising generosity of these fasting exemptions highlights a compassionate and pragmatic side of medieval society. It demonstrated a societal understanding that spiritual duties, while paramount, could be tempered by the realities of the human body, particularly as it aged. The image of a medieval elder enjoying a richer, more varied diet on a fast day than a younger, more active person challenges modern perceptions of medieval austerity. It illustrates a nuanced approach to health and piety, where the welfare of the elderly was held in high regard. These seemingly contradictory practices were not seen as loopholes, but as justified exceptions, ensuring that seniors, who had contributed much to society, were afforded the physical sustenance necessary to navigate their later years with as much comfort and dignity. The Church, often seen as rigid, showed surprising flexibility in these matters, guided by both theological interpretation and practical wisdom about the needs of the aging body. This was not a universal rule, but a widely accepted custom, particularly in regions where the influence of medical schools like Salerno was strong. The practice revealed a practical wisdom that balanced spiritual discipline with physiological necessity, a surprising example of humane consideration in a seemingly harsh era. Number 3. Drinking your way to health. Medieval seniors and their daily medicine. For many medieval seniors, the daily intake of alcoholic beverages was not merely a recreational indulgence, but a prescribed medical regimen, a surprising and pervasive dietary habit. Wine and ale were considered potent medicines, vital for health, digestion, and even as a source of warmth and calories, particularly for those in their later years. This was a far cry from modern understandings of alcohol consumption and health. In the medieval world, it was an integral part of geriatric care, often recommended by physicians and readily available in most households. The surprising aspect lay in the sheer quantity and consistent application of these beverages for therapeutic purposes. The belief in alcohol's medicinal properties stemmed from several sources. Wine, especially red wine, was thought to be hot and dry, according to humoral theory, and therefore capable of warming the cold and wet bodies of the elderly. It was believed to aid digestion, stimulate appetite, and even prolong life. Ale, though often considered cooler than wine, was valued for its nourishing qualities, being a source of calories and some vitamins, especially in a time when clean drinking water was often scarce or suspect. The Book of the Art of Healing, a popular medical text from the 12th century by Constantinus Africanus, explicitly listed various types of wine and their specific health benefits for different ailments. A typical senior might start their day with a small draught of warmed ale, perhaps before, or with their first light meal. This was thought to open the stomach and prepare the body for the day's nourishment. Throughout the day, particularly with meals, watered wine was a common accompaniment. The wine was often diluted to reduce its intoxicating effects while retaining its perceived medicinal qualities. Records from the infirmary of the Abbey of Westminster from 1390 show daily allowances of 2 cups of diluted wine for each elderly monk, specifically noting its provision for strength and stomach health. This was a standard part of their daily provisions, not an occasional treat. Different types of wine were prescribed for different conditions. For seniors experiencing weakness or a lack of appetite, a strong sweet wine might be recommended. For those suffering from cold humors, a well-aged red wine was often preferred. Spiced wines, known as hypocras, made by infusing wine with ginger, cinnamon, and cloves, were also highly valued for their warming and digestive properties. These were often given to the elderly, particularly during colder months, as a powerful tonic. A receipt from a London apothecary in 1480 lists a consistent purchase of specific spices for the preparation of hypocras, destined for an elderly noblewoman. Highlighting its role as a regular health supplement, ale, too, played a significant role. For those who could not afford wine or preferred a less potent drink, mild ale was a staple. It was seen as nourishing and hydrating, often safer than water from dubious sources. Older individuals, whose teeth might be poor, or whose digestion was delicate, found the softness of ale easier to consume than solid foods. It could be a significant source of calories when appetite was low. In rural peasant households where wine was a luxury, homemade ale was the primary beverage for all ages. But for seniors, it was considered particularly vital for maintaining strength and vitality. A 14th century peasant household inventory from rural France, recovered from a manor's records, frequently listed barrels of ale as a staple, with older family members often consuming it more consistently. The surprising aspect lies not only in the daily consumption but in the purpose behind it. Alcohol was not just for pleasure or social interaction for seniors. It was a fundamental part of their health management. Physicians advised on the type, quantity, and even temperature of the alcohol consumed. Warm wine, for example, was believed to be more effective at distributing heat throughout the body and stimulating digestion. Cold wine, on the other hand, might be considered too cooling for the fragile humors of the elderly. A detailed medical consultation record from Padua in 1420 concerning a 70-year-old scholar prescribed specific proportions of wine mixed with water and even suggested warming it with hot stones before consumption to optimize its therapeutic effects. This dietary habit reflected a medical philosophy that viewed alcohol as a powerful natural remedy, capable of balancing humors, aiding in nutrient absorption, and providing warmth. It was a holistic approach to senior care, integrating daily consumables with health maintenance. For medieval seniors, drinking wine or ale was not just a drink. It was often their prescribed daily medicine, a comforting and seemingly essential part of their routine, reflecting a deep-seated belief in its life-sustaining properties. The prevalence of this practice, documented in medical treatises, household accounts, and monastic records, shows a surprising dedication to using elderly, a testament to the differing cultural and medical understandings of the past. This widespread custom reveals a nuanced approach to health, where the properties of common beverages were carefully considered and applied for specific physiological benefits, particularly in the later stages of life. The emphasis was not on intoxication, but on the sustained, measured intake of these liquid medicines to support the aging body's internal balance and vitality. Number 4, the surprising role of aged cheeses and preserved meats in the senior diet. When one considers the diet of medieval seniors, thoughts might drift to bland porridges and boiled vegetables, especially given the emphasis on gentle digestion. However, a surprising and vital component of their diet, particularly for those with means, included aged cheeses and various forms of preserved meats. Far from being avoided, these intensely flavored and often tough foods were considered not just acceptable but beneficial, providing concentrated nutrition and perceived medicinal qualities that were highly valued for the aging body. This practice challenges the notion of a universally soft and bland diet for the elderly. The inclusion of aged cheeses and preserved meats stemmed from several practical and theoretical considerations. From a practical standpoint, these foods were durable and provided a consistent source of protein and fat, crucial in an era without modern refrigeration. For seniors who might have reduced appetites or difficulty consuming large quantities of fresh food, concentrated sources of nutrition or invaluable. From a theoretical perspective, particularly regarding cheeses, some aged varieties were considered hot and dry, according to humoral theory, capable of warming the typically cold and wet humors of the elderly. Records from the Burgundian court physician's notes in 1470 show repeated recommendations for strong aged cheeses for the Duchess's elderly aunt, noting that they strengthen the stomach and provide warmth. Aged cheeses, particularly hard, mature varieties, were a surprising staple. Unlike fresh, soft cheeses, which were often reserved for younger individuals or specific ailments, the older, more pungent cheeses were deemed beneficial. They were thought to cut through phlegm and aid digestion due to their sharpness and concentrated nature. Parmesan-like cheeses, often imported or produced locally with similar methods, were prized. These cheeses were not always eaten in large quantities, but were often grated over other foods or consumed in small, intense bites. The records of a prosperous Italian merchant family in Florence from 1390 indicate the regular purchase of formaggio vecchio, old cheese, specifically for the patriarch of the family, who was in his late 70s. This was seen as a sign of care and provision for his unique dietary needs. Preserved meats, while sometimes tough for chewing, were also a significant component for seniors, particularly cured hams, salted fish, and dried sausages. These meats, through the curing process, lost much of their moisture and became highly concentrated in flavor and nutrients. For seniors who might find it challenging to chew large portions of fresh meat, small, thin slices of cured ham or finely shredded salted beef could provide necessary protein. These were often served alongside soft breads or pottages to ease consumption. A description in the Housebook of the German monarchy from around 1480, detailing provisions for an elderly count, listed finely sliced air-dried ham as a common breakfast item, consumed it with softened bread. Salted fish, such as cod or herring, was another preserved protein source. While it required desalting before consumption, once prepared, it offered a lean but nutrient-rich option. For seniors, it might be flaked and mixed into pottages, or served in small, manageable pieces. Its availability year-round made it a reliable food source, especially during long winters, or when fresh fish was scarce. A surviving inventory from a coastal English monastery in 1320 lists substantial quantities of dried and salted cod, earmarked for the infirmary, and the elder monks, highlighting its consistent role in their diet. The preparation of these preserved foods for seniors often involved specific techniques to make them more palatable. Hard cheeses might be grated or crumbled into soups and stews, softening their texture while imparting flavor and nutrients. Cured meats might be thinly sliced, simmered in broths, or even pounded into a paste to make them easier to chew and digest. The goal was to unlock their concentrated nutritional value without causing undue strain on the aging digestive system or teeth. This careful preparation burst a surprising balance between utilizing robust preserved foods and ensuring their suitability for an elderly palate. The meticulous attention to detail in preparing these tough foods for senior consumption shows a level of ingenuity and care often overlooked. The surprising aspect is the direct contradiction to the white diet idea of bland, easily digestible foods. Here were foods that were anything but bland, often pungent and tough, yet considered essential. This highlights the complexity of medieval dietary advice, which was not monolithic but nuanced, taking into account various factors like a food's perceived hotness or coldness, its nutritional density, and its storability. For a senior seeking to maintain strength and vitality, these aged and preserved items offered a potent dose of concentrated life force, reflecting a surprising sophistication in their understanding of nutritional needs. The consistent presence of these specific items in records designated for elderly consumption across different social classes though varying in quantity and quality, demonstrates a shared belief in their benefits. It reveals that medieval elders were not just consuming soft foods, but were also surprisingly reliant on robust, preserved ingredients to sustain their health and vigor, a practice that defies modern expectations of a geriatric diet. Number 5. Senior superfoods. The forgotten power greens and herbs of medieval age. When discussing medieval diets, especially for the elderly, one might expect a focus on grains and protein. However, a surprising and often overlooked aspect of senior nutrition in the medieval period was the deliberate and widespread use of specific power greens and medicinal herbs. These plants, far from being mere flavoring agents, were considered vital for maintaining health, promoting longevity, and addressing the specific ailments of aging. They were the medieval seniors' original superfoods, integrated into daily meals with intention and surprising variety. This practice reveals a deep practical botanical knowledge applied directly to geriatric care. The reliance on specific greens and herbs for the elderly stemmed from medieval medical texts that detailed the humoral properties of plants. Certain herbs were classified as warming, cooling, drying, or moistening, and were prescribed to balance the humors which were believed to become imbalanced with age. For example, older bodies were often perceived as becoming cooler and wetter, leading to recommendations for hot and dry herbs to counteract these changes. A treatise from the 11th century, the Canon of Medicine, by Avicenna, though originating from the Islamic world, and contained extensive sections on the therapeutic uses of various plants, including spur grains. Nettle was surprisingly common. Among the power greens, nettle was surprisingly common. While prickly when raw, when cooked, nettle became tender and was highly valued for its perceived ability to cleanse the blood and reduce joint pain, common ailments in old age. It was often boiled into soups or pottages, for seniors, providing vital minerals and a warming effect. Another frequently used green was borage, recognized for its cooling properties, but more importantly for its supposed ability to gladden the heart and alleviate melancholy, a condition sometimes associated with old age. It was often steeped as a tea or added fresh to light salads for those elderly who could still manage chewing raw greens. Accounts from the infirmary of the Abbey of St. Albans from 1460 mention regular foraging trips, specifically for nettle, and borage for the resident older monks, highlighting their deliberate inclusion. Rosemary, a hot and dry herb, was highly prized for its purported ability to improve memory and circulation, critical concerns for the aging mind and body. It was often infused in wine or added to mild stews. Sage, another hot herb, was widely believed to aid digestion and strengthen the nervous system, making it a common addition to poultry or fish dishes prepared for seniors. Thyme, known for its antiseptic properties, was also used particularly in broths, believed to support respiratory health, which was often a concern for the elderly. A recipe from a 15th century French culinary manuscript titled Le Viandière, adapted for elderly consumption, included specific instructions for generous use of rosemary and sage in preparations of chicken and fish for those of advanced years. The cultivation of these specific plants was also noteworthy. Monasteries and large estates often maintained dedicated herb gardens, not just for general medicinal use, but specifically for the infirmary and the older members of the community. These gardens would prioritize plants known for their benefits to the aged. For instance, detailed plans for a monastic garden from the St. Gall plan of 820. While ancient show a clear demarcation for medicinal herbs, many of which were later identified as having properties relevant to geriatric care. This structured cultivation underlines the importance placed on having these specific plants readily available. The surprising aspect is the proactive and systematic integration of these specific plants into the diet of seniors. It was not a haphazard addition, but a carefully considered part of their daily nourishment, based on a sophisticated, albeit pre-scientific understanding of botany and human physiology. The use of these power greens and herbs demonstrates a medieval appreciation for the subtle yet profound effects that plant-based nutrition could have on the aging body. It paints a picture of a society that, without modern pharmaceuticals, turned to the earth's bounty for remedies and preventative care, particularly for its respected elders. These plants, with their pharmacies, their tonics, and their preventative medicine, all rolled into the daily meals, a testament to a deep-seated connection between diet, nature, and health in the medieval world. The detailed medical advice on dosages and methods of preparation for these herbs further reveals the serious nature of their application. Moving beyond simple folklore into a form of systematic dietary therapy, this practice was a silent yet pervasive thread woven into the daily lives of medieval seniors, a surprising beacon of sophisticated natural healthcare in a seemingly rudimentary age. Number 6. The strange custom of pottage as the ultimate senior comfort food. Pottage, a thick soup or stew made by boiling grains, vegetables, and sometimes meat or fish, was a ubiquitous dish in medieval Europe. While common for all social classes, its role for seniors was surprisingly specialized and elevated, making it the ultimate comfort food tailored specifically for their aging bodies. Far from being a mere filler, senior pottage was often a carefully crafted, nutrient-dense, and highly adaptable meal, reflecting specific medical beliefs and practical needs. Its surprising versatility and consistent presence in the diets of the elderly reveal a thoughtful approach to geriatric nutrition. The importance of pottage for seniors lay in its inherent digestibility and adaptability, as medieval physicians believed that the digestive fire weakened with age foods that were soft, moist, and easily assimilated were paramount. Pottage, slow cooked until ingredients were tender and almost pureed, perfectly fit this requirement. It provided hydration and calories in a single, easy-to-consume form, which was particularly beneficial for seniors with poor teeth or diminished appetites. A 14th century physician's handbook, the Lilium Medicinae, by Bernard de Gordon, frequently recommended nourishing pottages for the aged, emphasizing their ease of digestion and their ability to restore lost humors. The basic ingredients for senior pottage varied, widely depending on social class and region, but the method of preparation for the elderly remained consistent: thorough cooking to extreme tenderness. For the poorer senior, pottage might be a simple gruel of oats, barley, or rye simmered with water, and foraged wild herbs or root vegetables. This provided essential bulk and some nutrients, ensuring survival. A common practice in peasant households recorded in manorial surveys from 1290 in England indicated that the oldest members of the family often received the thinnest and most thoroughly cooked portion of the day's pottage, ensuring they could swallow it with ease. For wealthier seniors, pottage transformed into a surprisingly sophisticated dish. It could be made with finer grains like rice or ground almonds, enriched with almond milk, egg yolks, and even small, finely shredded pieces of boiled chicken or capon. Vegetables like tender spinach, finely chopped leeks, or carrots would be cooked until they virtually dissolved. Sweet pottages were also common, sweetened with honey or dried fruits like dates and figs, providing easily digestible sugars and energy. These richer pottages were not just bland concoctions, but often subtly flavored with gentle spices like saffron or ginger, believed to aid digestion without overstimulating the humors. The household accounts of a prominent Venetian merchant from 1450 show consistent purchases of saffron and sweet almonds specifically for my lord's morning pottage, indicating a tailored and luxurious approach to this senior staple. The versatility of pottage meant it could be adapted to various perceived needs. For a senior needing warmth, a more hot pottage with ginger and pepper, in very small medicinal quantities, might be prepared. For one needing calming, a pottage with soothing herbs like chamomile or borage could be considered. It was a vehicle for both nourishment and medicine, often prescribed by physicians as a base for various health-boosting ingredients. A regimen for the elderly from 1360, found among the papers of a French physician, detailed several specific pottage recipes, from weakness of the stomach to coldness of the blood. Always emphasizing long cooking times, pottage was often consumed at all meals by seniors. A light pottage for breakfast, a heartier one for the main meal, and a thin, comforting one before bed. This consistent consumption ensured a steady intake of easily digested nourishment throughout the day, preventing the dips in energy or appetite that could plague the elderly. It was also considered a comfort food, in the truest sense, providing warmth, satiety, and a sense of routine. The image of a medieval senior spooning a bowl of steaming, nourishing pottage was a common sight, embodying care and practical dietary wisdom. This simple yet profound dish was a cornerstone of geriatric care, a surprising testament to its adaptability and perceived health benefits in the medieval world. Its pervasive use, from humble cottages to grand castles, shows its universal acceptance as the ideal food for the respected elders of society, a testament to its role as a fundamental pillar of medieval senior diet and well-being. The continuous refinement and adaptation of pottage recipes for the aged over centuries reveal a persistent focus on providing optimal nutritional support for seniors in a form that was both practical and aligned with the medical understanding of the time.